Internally, Terry McLaurin's holding is a non-issue, and the interceptions thrown by Jayden Daniels, a welcome sign of aggression that the offense needs to adopt in 2025. That and more coming up right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders. I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, and I'm right here with you 5 days a week. You can also find me writing about the Commanders on Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. Follow me on X at DHarrison82, and I thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen today, and a special thank you goes out to all the everydayers who come through for every single episode. If you haven't already, please subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode. It's your first time coming through. Welcome to the show. Hopefully you like what you hear and you come back and join us again real soon. Coming up on today's episode, we are doing a mailbag. We've got questions on the offensive line depth and the 53-man roster, but we're starting it all off with the two biggest names in training camp talk right now, Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. While everyone is focused on Terry McLaurin's contract, the real story of training camp is how Jayden Daniels is responding to the pressure from a surprisingly effective defense, at least this early. But first up, we're going to talk about Terry McLaurin with a question from an insider that asks, does Terry McLaurin's hold-in impact the player dynamics? Does he lose any respect from players or from the staff members? And I'm going to tell you right now, no, he doesn't lose any respect from anybody in the building. Zero concern. Now, I'm sure the front office doesn't necessarily appreciate the public tactics and all those things, but everybody kind of understands this is the business side of this job, right? This is exactly, GMs, they have a job for a reason. Assistant GMs have this job for a reason. It's not just to scout and evaluate and draft. It's also to go through and deal with these contract negotiations and these tough situations. This is where your best GMs in the NFL really make their money. So nobody, I don't think anybody is, because Terry, even in his feelings of feeling disrespected and all this stuff, he's not taking any personal shots out there, right? He's not sitting there saying, Adam Peters hasn't been here. He doesn't know what I've done, doesn't know me, like things like that, and Terry, even though he feels kind of a personal kind of way about things, at least publicly is not making it personal, in the way that he's talking about other people involved in the process. So no, I don't believe that Terry McLaurin is losing any respect from anybody in the organization. Certainly there might be some frustrations, you know what I mean? But then that's certainly, understandable, I think. But I don't think as far as do you lose respect for someone, I don't think we're there yet. Players' perspective, the teammates are supporting him. And the best analogy I can give you is whatever job you do, imagine someone in your office, in your space with the same job going out there and trying to get more money. You're going to want them to get that money. Now, if you think they're less of an employee than you and they get that money, then you're worth more money, so you're going to go get that. And if you think they're on par, same thing, right? High tides raise all ships and all that stuff. If I heard of a Locked On host who was getting more money from the network, for doing the same job, I'd be happy because I want to go get more money from the network, and it just helps me. So it's that kind of thing. Plus the whole brotherhood thing, right? Players understand players, soldiers understand soldiers. Whatever it is you want to, whatever analogy you want to go with. Plus, I've spoken with several players, during training camp, some of them on the record here on the show, but even some just side conversations and plenty of them when the topic of Terry comes up, or if, we see Terry out there signing autographs with fans and things like that, the words, they need to pay this man in some way, shape, or form, usually come out of their mouths, right? So players absolutely understanding what it is. They want him out there, certainly, but no, they're not losing any respect for him. And then the staff, as far as the coaches are concerned, coaches almost are too busy to lose respect for somebody. Like Bobby Ingram, the wide receivers coach, he's got plenty of receivers that need his attention. Cliff Kingsbury's got an offense to design and draw up, and a quarterback to worry about. Dan Quinn's worried about the entire scheme of things. So yeah, I don't think anything like that is going on internally with this whole Terry situation. Leading that to a perfect follow-up question on Terry's contract: could incentives be used to find common ground between players and the front office? That question is brought up by Insider Bill. The first question brought up by Insider Terry. So Terry asking a question about Terry. Now we have Bill asking another question about Terry and asking if incentives could be used to kind of find that middle ground between Terry McLaurin and the front office. And yeah, absolutely. Incentives are kind of a standard and effective tool in building that, we're bridging that financial gap, right? When you hear total value and you hear guaranteed value, the difference between the guarantee and the total, those are incentives based, whether it's games played, catches, things like that. And you've got two categories of incentives. You got incentives that are likely to be achieved, and you got incentives that are unlikely to be achieved. So there might be an incentive there where if Terry sets a single season record for receptions, then he gets $1 million. If he sets a season single record in touchdowns, he gets $1 million, right? And I'm just spitballing here, but absolutely, incentives are a big way. But, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know how you want to look at it, but in today's world, especially of social media and media, dominance and all this other stuff, the annual average value matters to players right now. The real number that needs to matter to players is guarantees. And certainly that number matters. I think the most is the guaranteed amount, but also what matters is the annual average value, because when the contracts go out and when we talk about rankings of contracts, what do we talk about? We talk about, it's worth $30 million a year. Yeah, that $30 million a year for 3 years is $90 million, right? But the guarantee might only be $40 million. That's how much money the player knows he's going to make no matter what happens in that contract. But what is everybody going to talk about? Everybody's going to talk about the 90. That's why you talk about like Javon Kinlaw. People talk about, they're paying Javon Kinlaw $15 million a year. That's way too much money. Yeah, the Washington Commanders are only paying Javon Kinlaw $15 million a year if he goes out there and earns $15 million a year. If he doesn't earn $15 million a year, they're not going to pay him $15 million every year of this contract. So there's different ways that this goes about. But a lot of times when you hear about a player maybe asking for, in this case, say he's asking for north of $33 million, let's say they come in and the contract settles at $32 million per year annual average value. Like, okay, well, Terry took less money. Well, more than likely what happened is that contract went from, hey, we'll give you $32 million annual average value and we'll guarantee 40% of the contract. And Terry says, no, I want $36 million, just for example. And I want 50% of a guarantee. And they said, look, dude, we love you. We like you. We want you on the team. How about this? Come down to our number, $32 million annual average value, and we'll up the guarantees to 60%. Let's kind of call it a done deal. And Terry says, okay, fine. So he takes a little bit of a hit on the annual average value. Media members, we go out there and we're not necessarily praising him and his agent for getting a top 5, top 3 contract, things like that. But in reality, he and his wife and his family and his future get much more guaranteed money on the contract that they got versus the other contract. So certainly incentives are a big way, and certainly it's a little bit of a win-win for both sides, but there are some other aspects to it as well. We're going to pivot real quick to Dr. Wonderful Insider, who comes through and asks a question about quarterbacks. Some fans seem a bit concerned about Jayden Daniels' interceptions over the last few days of training camp. How concerned should we be? And I will tell you, you should be concerned not at all. This is a quarterback who is out there without his number one wide receiver. He's got a lot of new receivers that he's throwing to, right? Even Chris Moore. Certainly he was around just a little bit last year, but, being where he was in the depth chart and on the practice squad and all that stuff, not getting a lot of reps with Jayden, right? So this training camp is really the most work that these two have been able to do together. And then you got Debo out there. Luke McCaffrey is not brand new, but second-year receiver, and he's certainly taking different strides. Jalen Lane is new. There's a lot of guys who are just kind of molding themselves or folding themselves into the mix here with Jayden. So that's part of it. The other part of it is exactly what Zach Ertz said earlier in training camp, is that training camp is the time where you push the limits. You do the what ifs. You do the can I make this fit? You test things that you don't normally test on, say, a game day. You see two guys bracketing Deebo Samuel. Hey, man, maybe I can fit this ball into him. Maybe I can't, but I'm going to rip it. I'm going to give it a shot. And look, this defense has played really, really well. Mikey Sanders still made a one-handed interception grab the other day that I sent out a tweet about. 80% of defensive backs in the NFL don't make that interception. So that's, does it end up being a PBU? Potentially, right? But we're not going to stress PBUs either. So look, it's training camp. Things are being tested. Things are being installed, right? Like we're getting new looks from the offense that they're literally out there practicing in real time for the first time. And then they want to tweak it. They want to move it. They want to adjust it. So take all the news for what it is. But honestly, I wouldn't take too much of it heavily one way or the other. I'm not telling you to go out there and make the Washington Commanders defense / special teams your top pick in fantasy football because they're getting these interceptions. And I'm not going to tell you to avoid Jayden Daniels because he's throwing these interceptions. So, you got to kind of stay a little bit of an even ground with it and just take the information as it comes. Plus, don't forget the wow plays, right? Day one, first ever play in 11-on-11s was a deep pass to Deebo Samuel. Day 4, another throw to Jalen Lane that was absolutely dropped in a bucket. Jalen didn't get both feet down in bounds, But if he can get better there, get a little bit more control over his body there, that's a touchdown. That first one's a touchdown. Those good throws are things you're going to see transfer positively into the regular season. The bad throws, I guess I can't fit that ball there. Those throws are not going to be coming back in the regular season. That's kind of the point of this period of the preseason. So don't sweat that too much. So we're going to go from quarterback and Terry McLaurin, talk to some unheralded players, some guys that are maybe making a little bit of a surprise mark at training camp so far. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or you're just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest. Some days on the course or off of the course, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. What's the wildest shot you've ever made? Was it a total fluke or a well-calculated miracle? I'm not a golf pro. I do enjoy swinging a club here or there. Usually a driving range guy, a little bit of putt-putt, but I will get out on the real course and do some things. But at the end of the day, it's all about good times with good people and good flavors. Of course, the grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the Bev card. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use the promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. It's time to talk about the guys who are potentially earning roster spots right now and the defensive dominance that is making it possible for some of these players to shine. We're going to start. It's a merged question. We're going to kind of blend two questions. Robbie and Merle both coming through, basically asking who are the early positive surprises in training camp so far, and can Javontae Jean-Baptiste specifically be a surprise player in training camp? And I'll tell you that Merle's instinct is spot on. Javontae Jean-Baptiste is a prime candidate, but he's not the only one flashing, of course. But Javontae is certainly doing some really good things. And look, entering the preseason, entering training camp, he was one of the players that I was really excited to watch, really had good feeling about, looking, for him to take that next step, so to speak. Got a practice sack on Marcus Mariota not that long ago on day 3, got in real clean, real smooth move to get into the backfield. And then he got some more early penetration again just a couple of days ago in some team drills as well. So Javontae Jean-Baptiste is going to be one of those players, especially against the New England Patriots, when you get a little bit more live action and going up against an actual foe. And then in the preseason game, where tackling is live. Now we can get after the quarterback. Now we can hit that running back and drag him down in the backfield. Javontae Jean-Baptiste is absolutely someone who's been standing out here and there in training camp, and someone that you're looking to continue doing so in the preseason once we get to all that action. As is linebacker Jordan Magee, guest on the show yesterday's episode. If you missed that interview with Jordan, make sure you go back and check out that episode as soon as you're done with this one. Having a really good camp, and he's healthy again, doing a lot of the things that we saw him doing last year before he suffered the knee injury. But now he's running it healthy, he's doing it clean, doing it quick. Football IQ is showing up in a big way, and doing a lot of good blitzing from his position group, his position as well. Registered a tackle for loss against Chris Rodriguez Jr. recently. Again, no live tackling, so it's a quote-unquote tackle for loss, but you love the penetration, you love the read. I've seen him, penetrating through a lot of trash, through a lot of, flowing bodies, and just finding his way to the ball carrier. So you love seeing all that. Running back to Croskey-Merritt, 7th-round pick, is a guy that a lot of people are talking about. We've been talking about since he got drafted. Excited in OTAs, all that stuff. First day in pads, looked really good as well. But all throughout all of these things, rookie minicamp, OTAs, mandatory minicamp, into training camp, he looks shifty. He looks clean. The dude puts his foot in the ground, boom, hits a cut, doesn't lose any speed, doesn't lose any of his acceleration. It's just really, really impressive to kind of watch him move. And then when you put the pads on, watch him get skinny through the holes, getting in there, finding lanes. He and Tyler Owens kind of thumping, right, colliding there in the field. But guess what? Neither man went down. Croskey-Merritt able to absorb that hit, stay on his feet. Contact balance is always incredibly important. And then later on in the practice, we watch him dragging Eddie Goldman behind him, showing that churning power, showing that lower body torque that you always want in your running back. Recently was on the radio, was kind of asked, like, Where does Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt fit? Is he more B-Rob? Is he more Austin Eckler? I think he can be a blend of both, honestly. I think he's got enough power to be respected in that avenue, be it between the tackles runner, A-gap runner, things like that. But he also thinks he's got the speed and the shiftiness to be dangerous on the outside and also as a receiver. So Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt certainly has the athletic tools to become kind of an every down back type of player, a complete 3-down back. We'll see if the talent and the education and the coaching all gets it there eventually, but certainly doing a lot of exciting things. And he's another one. Once they get to go up against the Patriots, can't wait to see what he does. Michael Strawn, wide receiver. He's been on this team before. He's having a really good camp, guys. He's showing up for his team. A lot of times second, third team reps, you know what I mean? Things like that. But he's making a lot of good plays in the scenario training that they did just yesterday on Tuesday. Final 30 seconds of the game or the half. 3 timeouts. You're deep in your own end. You got to get into field goal range. He ends up making a really good catch during that session. Also had a game-winning touchdown catch over Bobby Price from Sam Hartman in a situational drill. So Michael Strawn showing up for all of the right reasons. And of course, the performances of guys like this can lead to follow-up questions from guys like Insider Bill and Hamadou, who asked about a 53-man roster and how the team can keep a guy like Javontae Jean-Baptiste around, specifically talking about futures contracts. So futures contracts you see signed in the early part of the offseason, and those are basically contracts that just kind of hold a guy in onto a roster who was a practice squad guy most likely and is just going to move forward, and basically just says, you have a spot in our training camp, you have a spot in our mini camp, you're going to have your spot. Once we get to this part of the season, the futures contracts, that stipulation just is a regular contract, right? And now you have either you're on the active roster, you're released, or you're on the practice squad. For a guy like Javontae Jean-Baptiste, again, I think he has a big opportunity to make the active roster. But if he doesn't make the active roster, the way the process works is you have to waive him. So you would waive a player like that first, and it's risky, right? Because now you expose him to the waiver wire. Other teams can go after him, bring him onto their teams, do all kinds of stuff. If he clears waivers, then you can bring him back to the practice squad, and then from there you can elevate him up to 3 times during the regular season onto the active roster for a game before you have to sign him to the active roster completely. So, it's possible to put a guy like that on the practice squad. But again, Javontae certainly is on his way to making the decisions very, very difficult for this coaching staff on who they're going to keep and who they're going to let go. I had a conversation with a member of the team not that long ago on the staff and said, like I'm looking at this, I'm like, y'all are gonna have to waive and release some very good players this offseason, which of course is a big challenge, but it's also what you want as an NFL team. Final for this segment here, a great question that came in from Insider Tia. If the defense dominates the offense during training camp, does it mean the offense is bad? No, not necessarily. Now, if the defense dominates the offense every day, every series, every drill, you might have some questions, you know what I mean? But really, at the end of the day, what's happening right now is the offense is having good moments. The defense is having good moments. The offense is having good practices. The defense is having good practices. The offense, most of their good practices came early on, right? Typically, the way we've kind of seen this, so we've had 2 3-day periods. The first day of the first period, the offense was kind of boom. It was basically the offense's day. The second day was a little bit more balanced. The third day, the defense won. The second 3-day stretch was kind of the same. Now, the first day and the second 3-day stretch, Magee still got an interception, so it wasn't just completely one-sided for the offense. Second day was a little bit more balanced. Third day, the defense certainly won. We also have to look at the context of it, right? Especially this last 3-day period. The final set of plays in this final 3-day period was a scenario drill. Washington Commanders offense comes on the field. They're in their own territory. I want to say they lined up on their own 25. They have less than 30 seconds left on the clock. They're down by 3. You have 3 timeouts. That's a situation. You all watch enough football. The offense is going to fail more times than not. So when you have situations like this, or you have end of half scenarios where you're down 6, 13 seconds left on the clock, and you're on the plus 40, you're on the opponent's 40-yard line, what's the defense going to do? They're going to play shell coverage. They're going to put 3 or 4 guys deep. They're going to keep you out of the end zone. The defense, more likely than not, is going to win that drill. So you also have to remember what the drills are that are being played, right? So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Again, the offense is winning here and there. The defense is winning here and there. All sides are feeling good about the competition and all those things. So I think that it stands out more because there's emotion attached to it, right? So like fans who attended practice on Tuesday, for example, probably walked out and they're like, man, that wasn't a very good practice. And, Jaden didn't look too sexy and like the offense wasn't humming too right. But the defense was doing really well. But again, a lot of the contextual scenarios they were in we're kind of slanted to have the defense in a better situation to close the game out. I don't want to take away from what the defense is doing, certainly, but also remember, you want your defense to be good. Like, nobody was cheering when the defense shut down Jayden Daniels' offense in that scenario. But if we're in Northwest Stadium in week 1 and the defense shuts down the New York Giants in that scenario, y'all are going crazy. And y'all are like, oh man, I love this Commanders performance, right? So it's just a little bit of context of what we're watching, what we want to see. Like, fans, you don't come to practice wanting to see a lot of defense, right? You come to, unless it's interceptions. You come to practice because you want to see big plays. You want to see Deebo Samuel going downfield. You want to see Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt breaking a big run. When you see Jayden Daniels in the offense go out there, run a bunch of plays, burn 2 timeouts, and then get stopped on 4th down and turn the ball over and the game's over, that's not as fun, right? If it's a pick 6, you're through the roof. So it's just contextual. That's all I would say is contextual about it. So I wouldn't put too much strain on all of it. So the defense looks legitimate, right? And that's good. The offense also looks legitimate, and you like a lot of things that they're installing. But the real question, honestly, that we have to answer is what's going to happen with the offensive line, because they don't get that figured out. None of this is really going to matter at the end of the day. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever wished that managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning your next big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal chief financial officer, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. But Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place. So in addition to manage your money, you could also potentially build some wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I have to admit, I knew I spent a lot of money on, delivery food and things like that. I work a lot. I eat while I work, and I try to have my food delivered while I work, especially on the road. But it was a little bit surprising on just how much I was spending on it. So I got a little bit better in managing that, maybe stopping somewhere instead or going to the grocery store when I'm on the road and getting something a little bit better for me and my wallet. And that's exactly what Monarch Money can help you do. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com to get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. As with every NFL team, the Washington Commanders season could hinge on the offensive line. And the answer involves both developing Brandon Coleman at left guard and potentially making a key signing. So Insider Merle came through and asked, will moving Brandon Coleman to guard stunt his development? I'm going to say no. And I'm going to say no because when you look at Brandon Coleman's strengths, right, at least from my perception, everybody's got their own view on it. I perceive Brandon Coleman as having a better anchor. I remember watching Myles Garrett trying to bull rush him, and Brandon Coleman reacted much better to a Myles Garrett bull rush than he did to a Myles Garrett swim move or rip, trying to get around him, things like that. That's where you kind of need that help. That's where you need that kind of chip. We go back to practice just the other day. Von Miller, very early in that end of game scenario we were just talking about, got a really good rep against Andrew Wiley, got right around him and flushed Jayden Daniels out of the pocket, forced him to run. They brought him down in the field of play, forced the Commanders offense to burn a timeout. You hate seeing that kind of stuff. Very next play, what happened? Von Miller tried to get around Andrew Wiley again. Austin Eckler chip blocked him to help out. So that's effective for the defense, and that's considered a win for the defense because you have an offense that's trying to move the ball downfield quickly. One of their weapons in the passing game just got delayed himself because they had a chip blocker or pass rusher. So it's a win either way, right? So the better you have that offensive line prepared to handle those one-on-one matchups, the less help you have to give them. Brandon Coleman, with that anchor, wide body, space eater, holds his ground, very, very suited, especially as a pass protector inside, I think more than he was outside. And that's something when he was coming in the NFL, I remember having this conversation after he was drafted. A lot of draft experts, a lot of NFL people thought that Brandon Coleman was a better guard in the NFL than he was tackle. Now, I think he did an admirable job to have the job last year as a starting left tackle, but Laramie Tunsil certainly is going to be better fit there. Brandon Coleman moving inside, I think it accentuates what he's already strong at and helps him start to continue getting better at everything else and how to read defenses and all that stuff. Still has room to grow, of course, not perfect by a long shot, but I still think that he has the ability. Plus, now he's getting experience in the NFL at multiple positions. So if you ever need to kick him back out to tackle, he wasn't an all-pro or anything like that, but he's got that experience and he's got that knowledge. We're going to wrap this up with Insider Tim comes through and says, who would be a good interior guy to sign since Nate Herbig retired? We're hurting with Michael Dieter. And what about free agent Will Hernandez. So Will Hernandez is someone that we've talked about before here on the program, suffered an ACL injury in October. However, here just recently in the last couple of days says that he's been fully cleared to return to football activities. And when Nate Herbig, backup guard, potentially backup center, retiring this week and deciding to no longer pursue the game of football, at least for now, this is certainly something that the team could possibly pursue. However, I think the team already has a little bit of decent depth, right? So if you look at your starting five, Laramie Tunsil, Brandon Coleman, Tyler Biadasz, Nick Allegretti, and Andrew Wiley, right? Behind them, you've got Sam Cosmi, who's working back from his injury. As soon as he works back from his injury, either Nick Allegretti or Brandon Coleman is a backup. Both of those guys have backup guard potential or good guard potential. I think it's probably Nick Allegretti moving to backup status, but, that's good depth. Andrew Wiley, as soon as Josh Connerly Jr. is ready at right tackle, Andrew Wiley becomes a backup, and he's got inside-out versatility. Trent Scott is back there, filled in for Sam Cosmi when he got injured last year in the playoffs. So you have solid interior offensive line depth already. Where I think they have maybe a little bit of a deficiency in depth is actually on the outside, to be quite honest with you. But on the inside, you still have that Nick Allegretti has been taking center snaps as well with varying levels of success. And if you remember going back to last year, Tyler Biadasz got hurt. First game, Michael Dieter came in. He was also setting the protection. Didn't go very well. So the next time Michael Dieter had to play for Tyler Biadasz, it was Nick Allegretti setting the protection. So now he's getting backup center reps. Sam Cosmi comes back. Allegretti is your backup center. And if he needs to come in, he also knows how to set the protection. So you see the team taking steps to make sure that all this is done and all this is in place even before Herbig decided to retire. I wouldn't hate Hernandez coming on board, to be quite honest with you, but I also think that Hernandez probably trying to find an opportunity to start somewhere. I don't think that's here unless the team really, if Brandon Coleman really gets exposed against the Patriots, then maybe that could change. But as of right now, I don't know that that's really part of their priority. I think Hernandez is going to want to go play for a contender. So obviously Washington fits the bill, but also go fight for a starting job. And yeah, like this team says competition's open for everything, but like if you bring Will Hernandez into this team, to Bobby Johnson's coaching, to this scheme, like, yeah, if you can compete, you can compete, but he's so far behind the eight ball as far as knowing the system, knowing the scheme, having the continuity. I just don't see how it would really work out. Another guy to think about maybe is Dalton Reisner if the team decides to add another interior lineman to replace Herbig. Dalton Reisner's out there. He's been a starter. He's had some value as well. Some kind of like murkiness, some cloudiness over like how he and the Denver Broncos kind of fell out. So, I don't know all the details of that. So that's certainly something that Adam Peters and his staff would have to dive into. Most likely, though, I think they're probably going to kind of leave it as is, maybe for a little bit at least, and just kind of, maybe hold that roster spot until they need it. And, or they might have their eyes on a guy already that they're doing negotiations with. We go back to practice on Thursday, so we will certainly find out. That's going to do it for today's episode, today's mailbag. Great questions from Commanders fans. As always, keep them coming. I love doing this every time we get the opportunity to. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we're going to be back out of practice in Ashburn on Thursday. So we'll have a bunch of news, notes, and highlights from that. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, want to keep adding questions to the mailbag, you can do so by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Now the training camp is here. We're getting new insiders on a near daily basis. Welcome to all the new insiders, of course, and you're getting news and notes from me directly as much as I can during practice and throughout the day via text message. For your next listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily Major League Baseball locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. To the everydayers, see you every day. I appreciate you every day, and I'm going to thank you for coming through today. Until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.